Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our InQtel webinar. My name is Barry LeFew. I have the privilege of leading our Government Platform Accelerator at InQtel. And today we have a really interesting topic, right? One of the top headlines right now is regarding the government shutdown. And we'll do a quick review of the status of the shutdown. But what we're going to primarily focus on today is to allow everyone to review the priorities for FY26 and highlight what are some key opportunities for our InQtel portfolio firms to target. So I'd like to highlight that this today from our legal department, just a high-level disclaimer, which is that no government funds are used for this event today. And this is meant to be an educational event for our InQtel portfolio firms as well as the InQtel partner community. So with that, I'd like to introduce our speaker today. I would like to welcome Juliana Sly. Juliana is the CEO of Government Business Results, GBR. GBR provides a variety of consulting and marketing services to some of the leading government high-tech firms here in the DC area. Prior to being the CEO of GBR, Juliana had a variety of leadership roles at firms such as Adobe, Autodesk, SGI, and other roles where she led go-to-market and marketing strategy. So with that, we'd like to welcome Juliana. Thank you for your time today, Juliana. I'd like to turn it over to you to talk a little bit about your background, and then we can jump into the presentation. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Barry. I appreciate it. As Barry mentioned, I've got a background at the intersection of government, technology, and marketing, as well as business growth. And I'm really excited to be here with you. A lot of the work that I spend in my company actually draws on my 25 years of experience where we work with companies who are bringing technology online in support of the government mission. So while my company typically focuses on public sector writ large, which is government, education, and healthcare, today we're going to take a very deep dive into the federal market. But before we do that, I'm really excited, Barry, to talk about a new venture that I've started as well called GovAcademy.io. GovAcademy.io is meant to support individuals just like those that we have, professionals just like those that we have on today's webinar, meaning those B2G professionals who are working to support the mission. So whether you're in federal sales, marketing, business development, or in leadership, GovAcademy.io will deliver tools and training that will help you continue to grow in your career. And we've got a great holiday event coming up at Carasoft. If you're local to the DC metro area, I've put the link up on the website. It's a free event to join. There's actually no program other than coming together as a community to network and engage.
Excellent. That sounds like a great event, Juliana. And folks, will just as an FYI, we'll be sending out a copy of the slides to all of the everyone that registered, and in those slides will be a link to register for this event. Thanks, Juliana.
No worries. Thank you. All right. So if you're ready, Barry, so am I.
Well, sure thing. Let's jump in.
All right. So our time together is short. Here's what to expect. So roughly over the next hour or so, I'm going to unload the current best source intelligence on the federal technology market as it stands today. And a little bit of background. So you all already live in this space. I'm not going to give you a 101. This is really going to be a fast-paced executive level overview. If you have questions, please put them in the chat. I'll try to address them at the end, or if they're relevant, Barry will wedge in to what I'm talking about on that particular slide, and we'll try to answer it there. In terms of the slides and in terms of this presentation, the slides have a tremendous amount of information. I'm going to ask you, don't worry about screenshotting because you're going to get the slides afterwards. And what I'm going to do is not necessarily repeat what's on the slide. I want to try to give you, from my perspective, the slide gives you the what, I'm going to give you the so what. I'm really going to kind of give you my analysis and my background and how to apply it to your go-to-market efforts. All right, so today we're going to go through a federal budget overview, a policy update. We're going to take a look, we're going to click down into the IQT focus areas and kind of what's happening and what's available. And then we're going to go into the Q&A. I'm going to go straight to the heart of the matter. We're going to kick off with the state of the shutdown. Realistically, we're on the precipice of something absolutely historic. 35 days is the longest on record, and it occurred during Trump's first term. So in terms of where we're at right now, it's day 34, and we've got about 1.5 million employees who are really kind of unable to pay rent, and tens of millions of citizens unable to meet some of their basic nutritional and housing and other social services needs. This is applying an incredible amount of pressure to Congress for resolution, and all signs are really pointing to resolution this week or next. But here's the critical factor when you're asking yourself, where is this going to wind up? What's important to note is that the current CR runs out in less than 3 weeks. So why does that matter? Well, realistically, once it expires, we're beyond a simple voting measure. Congress will have to go back to the drawing board and draft and approve a new CR. That happens in one of two ways. Either the House gets reconvened for traditional business and drafts one there, or, and this is more likely, the Senate's going to draft one, pass it back to the House. At that point, the House either reconvenes for a traditional voting measure, or they do something called a pro forma. Now, I've highlighted what a pro forma is on the website, or on the slides, but realistically, it's all or nothing in a single vote. Everyone inside of the House has to, literally, there's a gavel in. Everyone in the House agrees to what the Senate puts forward. If that happens in a unanimous vote, then that CR will move forward. But if one member of the House dissents, the entire vote is cast aside and we're back to ground zero. This is why November 21st becomes a really compelling date, because there's so much risk at developing a new CR and really putting us forward. So if you're going to ask me, I think we're going to be resolved by November 21st. And if you take a look at the general voting public, now this is a great chart from Polymarket. Barry turned me onto this, and you can bet on just about anything at Polymarket. But this is this morning's screenshot. 42% of the betting public agrees with me that it's going to be after the 16th, and they don't show before the 21st, but I would tell you I think it's going to be closest to the 21st. Barry, do you have any thoughts on this?
I think it'll be fascinating to see how it plays out, Juliana. And one thing to note is I have been tracking this on Polymarket, and over the last couple of days, that percentage has steadily increased, and it does seem to be aligning around the 21st. So pretty fascinating, and you just never know what's going to happen. But from a prediction market standpoint, and it's also great to hear that that's your logical conclusion as well, Juliana. Thanks.
Yep. It's certainly a wild ride. So with that, let's take a look at the government budget. All right, so realistically, if you take a look at what's happening in FY25 and what's happening in FY26, and my animations are a little messed up here, but we'll move forward. In FY25, we had $128 billion obligated for IT software, and the majority of that skewed towards Civ. Where did the land come in? This is the really interesting part. The land came in at $139 billion. This is my annual reminder to everybody that what you see in terms of the budget is the floor. It is never the ceiling. In 25 years of doing this, I've never seen us come in under budget. And you can have an opinion about that as a taxpayer, but what I'm saying from an IT perspective is we typically land above with the budget. In this case, if you take a look at where we went from FY24 to FY25, we landed about 8.5% above the obligations. How did we do that? Well, the discretionary spend, right? So that's where that comes from. And this is about $6 billion over FY24. If you take a look at where we are for FY26, right now, and there's an estimate here, right now, DoD is about $66.1 billion for FY26, and that's coming out of the NDAA. Please note, it doesn't include the IC budget, which is classified. I could tell you that if I took a backwards look at where things were, taking a look at the NIP and the MIP, I would tell you we're probably going to be about $18 billion in IC spend, but again, the majority of it's classified, and this is me just making an unclassified guess. On the civilian side, the best numbers we can get to is to take a look at what's happening across the board at the higher level for what the president put forward back in May. And what the president put forward back in May was about a 22% reduction across the whole on the civ side. But interestingly enough, if you take a look at the technical perspectives of what he put out, they will actually list, and I've given you a link on the chart to where that slide is. It's a total of about 67.9 billion. This is less than the 75 billion that was put forward in FY24. But the interesting thing is, if you take a look at the civilian and the defense, not including the IC, we're at about 134 billion. That is, again, above where we started last year in terms of obligations. But the really interesting part is when you factor in that 8.5%, because remember, the obligations are the floor. We're still going to go above. We've got a potential land of $145 billion. So what does that mean? Realistically, what I'm looking at is the pie is actually getting bigger. It's just being sliced differently and substantially skewed towards the DoD and the IC side. So realistically, where do I think we're going to be spending? I'm going to be looking in 4 key areas and again, this is this top level, tops down view. I'm seeing spend being driven in 4 areas. Number 1, the escalating cyber risk. Number 2, the ongoing pressure for friction-free digital service and mission velocity. Number 2, the pressure for friction-free digital service and mission velocity. Number 3, an absolutely manic race to operationalize AI safely and in a scalable way. And number 4, a shrinking in-house workforce that is forcing agencies to outsource. Everything that we're going to talk about today is going to ladder up to those 4 forces. And if I were to sort of give you a TLDR right now, every buyer needs secure, automated, low-touch solutions that replace or augment humans and prove ROI under congressional scrutiny. And if you were to stop this recording right now and walk away, I would tell you that would be your high-level guidance. Barry, is there anything you'd want to add to that?
No, I think that you're spot on, Juliana. I think the one thing just to emphasize, and especially what we're seeing in the DoD and the intelligence community, is a real laser focus on time to mission, right? So that whole concept of velocity to mission really is about delivering capabilities sooner and faster and being more agile. And I think that really plays to companies that are providing products and solutions as opposed to large system integrators trying to build something from scratch. So I think that's one additional thing just to highlight there, Juliana. Thanks.
100%. All right, so continuing at the 10,000-foot view, the president's FY26 discretionary request proposes about 1.45 trillion in base discretionary spending, plus about another 163 billion in reconciliation authorized resources. This totals about 1.6 trillion, which matches FY25's top line. But the similarities really stop there. Within that total, so we go back to the pie is getting bigger, but we're shifting internally. We're seeing defense funding overall rise to about $1 trillion, including about 119 billion from reconciliation. This is a 13% increase over FY25. The non-defense discretionary funding, i.e. civ, falls to about 601 billion, reflecting some really sharp reductions across civilian agencies. Interestingly enough, the one protected space inside of the civ community is DHS. That funding jumps, and you see it in the chart, to about 107 billion, up 42 billion, largely due to border and cyber investments. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about why that is. Couple of things we're going to talk about as we go through is the one big beautiful bill. Wasn't that back this summer? Do we really need to look at it? And the answer is yes. It really adds its own special sauce to the mix. Why? There are a couple of reasons why. The first, it's really important because it's a mix of appropriations. Some are actually usable right now in the shutdown, meaning agencies can act on them if they've already been apportioned or if they're budget independent. Other components are actually budget dependent, which requires the enactment of the FY26 budget or a continuing resolution to move forward. Within that, there are 3 areas I want you to look at. The first is that there's $150 billion set aside for defense technology investment, everything from missiles to munitions to space and advanced R&D. This is really a potpourri of opportunity. Any of those dollars labeled to remain available until expended, that's the key language, are already actionable if they've been apportioned. So this is a great opportunity to use AI to dive into that bill to determine what meets that criteria. Second, it expands DOE's loan authority for programs like energy dominance financing. So whether those can actually be executed depends on whether or not the bill gave the DOE direct budget authority for those line items, or if they still need annual funds for the credit subsidies. Third, it introduces AI, tech, and supply chain rules. This matters. Things like sourcing restrictions and foreign entity prohibitions now come into play as a result of the One Big Beautiful Bill. These aren't new appropriations, but they will shape who is eligible for the money that follows once FY26 kicks in. So if you remember nothing else about the One Big Beautiful Bill, remember this. It is both funding and framing. Some money can move now. The rest of it is going to create guardrails and priorities that define FY26 once Congress finishes its work. The next thing shaping I want you to think about, and we're not going to go into a great bit of detail, but it really does matter for your relationships and for deal movement. And that is the fact that the pink slip wave is real and incredibly uneven. Civ-wide, we're talking about tens of thousands of seats that are already gone, and DoD alone is carving out up to 60,000 civilian posts, 5 to 8% of its back office muscle. That comes out of appropriations and acquisition. So it's forcing the services to outsource sustainment tasks that they can't legally assign to uniformed personnel, which is an uptick for contractors. And as an example here, the DoD froze some non-mission civilian hires, but doubled the scholarship for service slots and contracted surge cyber teams for joint exercises. So you're seeing some massive shifts here. On the IC flank, a Senate bill would hack ODNI headcount by about 60%, reshuffling some of the analytics functions back to the CIA and FBI. Net, it's a flood of cleared cyber, AI, and DevSecOps talent that is on the street. And what I would tell you as small businesses, go see if you can snap any of it up, number one. Number two, the agencies are losing the staff required to run their complex systems. So anything you can help them do to manage their complex systems in a simplified way is going to have an advantage. And that's the thing that I would look at.
And Juliana, I think that really highlights a great opportunity for AI solutions and AI-driven cyber solutions, right, to help address that staffing reduction and using AI and AI agents to help from a productivity standpoint. Thanks.
Barry, agree completely. AI has a huge play here, but not just AI, automation as well. I really think the power of AI comes alive when you marry it up with automation. And so solutions that deliver that, I agree, are going to have a really short-term fast take here. All right, so on the civilian landscape, we're going to go into each one of the focus areas in depth. So I'm going to hit you just at a high level here. FedCiv CIOs woke up this morning with 4 imperatives on repeat, and these are the same 4 imperatives that have been on repeat for the last 6 months, so I don't think they're going away. Number 1, they got to keep the zero trust headlights on. The mandatory milestones of September 2024 are met on paper, but the real spend now sits in sustainment. Continuous identity management, microsegmentation, automated compliance. There is zero wiggle room on MFA, segmentation, and continuous validation. Helping agencies sustain their zero trust approach is where the emphasis is, and it's where their nightmares are. Second, turning AI from press release into production, right? And I think we've all sort of seen that and understood that. With $450 million in new R&D plus EO 14110's risk guardrails, it means that every pilot must ship with bias testing, provenance tracking, and human-in-the-loop oversight. Services that you can monetize or that you can actually automate and provide an AI interface into. They've also been told by OMB to layer AI into just about anything that they possibly can, including CX upgrades that touch the public and fixed citizen touch points like the IRS, SSA, VA. They all carry TMF-funded CX sprints that agencies can't cancel without political heat. The same is true on the DoD side. We talked about mission velocity. AI really kind of fuels that. And the One Big Beautiful Bill drives all of this across the Fed space and fuels it. Third, they wake up thinking that they now have to accelerate cloud without any excuse. The GSA TTS handbook update that came in June of this year makes cloud.gov the default hosting target to minimize ATO compliance overhead and reduce security concerns with CI/CD baked into it. The ATARC DevSecOps maturity model, though, which came out in May, is really kind of hiding, like landing in the spotlight. That framework gives 5-level scoring across culture, pipeline automation, security gates, and measurement. And civilian agencies like the VA, DHS, GSA, and the FAA are actually using that model to baseline projects and justify a lot of their budget requests. Fourth, make it continuous and make it measurable. OMB M2504, which came out January 30th, folds secure software supply chain reporting, including SBOM status, automated testing and coverage, and continuous monitoring metrics into every agency's FY25 FISMA submission. CISA's cybersecurity performance goals for IT and product design, released January 7th, set voluntary but fast adopted checklists for secure by design coding, pipeline hardening, and shift left testing. All of this goes towards the government's ability to measure what is made and ensure continuity throughout. It points to really hardening their approach on ransomware and cybersecurity risks. On the right-hand side of the page, you're going to see an opportunities list. The opportunities cluster where funding is steady or rising. So take a look at NASA commercial services, DOE science around quantum HPC, NSF for AI and quantum, and the NIST standards, and particularly the R&D element, NIH stability, and ARPA-H moonshots, as well as FAA tech modernization. All of these are opportunities. We're going to dig a little bit deeper as we go. All right, I like to talk about DHS. Why? Because in the civ space, if you improve speed, coverage, or safety, DHS is really a near-term growth engine. Pick the right component, tie it to a metric, and show the path to scale. That's your playbook right there. Now, interestingly enough, when you peel back where the budget, that big budget increase comes from, the FY26 budget keeps the lights on at about $66 billion, but the big accelerant is that one big beautiful bill supplemental, $178 to $191 billion added onto it, aimed at border, cyber infrastructure protection, screening and identity, maritime coastal security, disaster resilience, and CWMD. So across the board, DHS has a lot of money to play right now. And if I were you, here's where I'd aim. If you sell sensors, towers, counter UAS, or analytics, go to CBP. They've got $65 billion. If you do identity, workflow, or case management at scale, ICE is where you're going. Maritime, C5ISR, resilient comms, or small UAS, Coast Guard. And there's not a whole lot of times Coast Guard is like where your priority is. This is one of those times. Disaster tech, drones for incident security, resiliency analytics, FEMA, right? Absolutely, $2.9 billion. Early pilots via OTA, go to the science and technology wing of the DHS. They've got about $760 million, and you want to go there through SVIP or LRBAA. In terms of what's moving right now for DHS, and we're going to talk about this more in depth as well, already obligated work, things that are no year or prior year pockets, have money that they're moving in this direction right now. The SVIP OTA awards, and then buys on a mass or a soup contract or component IDIQs. As the supplemental actually gets apportioned through the FY26 enactment, components can light up pilots, and particularly rapid pilots that directly hit border, cyber, screening, maritime, disaster, and those bio/CWMD missions. What does all of this mean? You have opportunity to move at DHS today, but if you don't see pockets today, you should start to get prepared, because the moment either a CR hits or the FY26 bill hits, things are going to go really, really fast.
That's an enormous increase, basically tripling the spend at DHS. So definitely that seems like a opportunity-rich target, Juliana. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. All right. So if the civ leaders woke up with four imperatives on repeat, the DoD leaders aim to beat them all. They determined to outpace them. So let's start with cybersecurity. all 27 components reported hitting the FY24 target objectives and shifted FY25 dollars to continuous policy enforcement, attack surface management, and the new zero trust overlays reference documents published for classified and coalition networks. Fundamentally, it's a distinct shift towards offensive hunt operations and secure autonomy. But we go back to sustainment, right? Because sustainment spend on identity analytics, microsegmentation, automated compliance now is actually showing up in every POM narrative and task order. So you have to look there. In addition to that, DIU opened solicitations for Replicator 2 in May, and it's focused on counter-UAS swarms, cyber-safe command and control, anti-spoofing. It does highlight, though, that there's a growing need for secure autonomy stacks like zero trust mesh, validated ML models, resilient comms, all of which is needed for rapid fielding drones and sensor support. So kind of look at in that direction. In terms of data, DISA's FY25 to 27 data strategy released in March calls for AI ML analytics to detect anomalous behavior. It really positions AI-driven SOC tools and automated compliance scanners as priority buys, and then Navy DoD CIOs have actually ordered PQC pilots across their enterprise networks. But they're giving guidance on accepted algorithms and key management technologies, and that guidance seems to change, so I would still consider it very much in draft motion. There's a big cloud push here as well, and it's a surprise to nobody. You know, the JWIC unlocks multi-billion-dollar workload migrations, and FedRAMP 2.0 is going to slash ATO time across the board that's going to be picked up in the IL. In fact, every line item that you see in that $66 billion book ladders up to either JADC2 or zero trust compliance, and you continue to see that moving forward. As well, I would add to it the DoD software modernization implementation plan that was released in May. It sets 3 near-term goals: scale continuous ATO, publish an AI ML ops DevSecOps reference design, and cut the red tape blocking developer access to modern tool change. So you begin to see where all of this is going. If you go back to that continuous comment that I made earlier, it really is towards continuity and sustainment, and we're going to continue to see that. In terms of program spend over on the right-hand side, you're going to see a major new inclusion around $25 billion for the Golden Dome Missile Defense Initiative. It's the initial phase of layered homeland missile defense architecture that integrates interceptors, sensors, and command and control systems. Now, the reconciliation bill authorizes about $24.4 billion for the integrated air and missile defense under Title II, and this is widely interpreted as the Golden Dome seed funding. So pay attention to that. MDA, OUSD, and OSD are going to oversee early design and prototyping. Other allocations include a significant investment in new platforms and modernization across missile defense, hypersonics, AI-enabled autonomy, and industrial base resilience. So think about all of that. What I would tell you to focus on here is track MDA and OUSD's R&E solicitations for early entry into the modular system integration opportunities. So think about all of the labyrinth legacy systems shifting into the really modular system and modular component capability. Barry, anything you'd want to add?
Yeah, I think one thing to highlight, Juliana, is that with that list of programs, they're probably going to be primarily led by system integrators, right? Mm-hmm. But that means that there's probably going to be components in those programs where there's opportunities for In-Q-Tel portfolio firms. So really the key is going to be to develop those relationships, to get ahead early, identify areas where portfolio firms can add value to those programs, because there's a lot of enormous amount of funding there across that list of programs, Juliana, and the key is going to be develop those relationships with the system integrators to be prepared.
Couldn't agree more. And I think that the system integrators today already see this coming, and they're trying to figure out as they make their own internal shifts between teams that we're actually building GOTS, government off the shelf, into teams that support COTS. And so you want to be one of their chosen tools that they're going to support and extend into these tech refreshes and integration cycles. Right, Barry?
Absolutely. There is a definite shift going on, right, from just kind of building it from scratch to really leveraging commercial technology, dual use technology that can
Yeah.
be rapidly inserted into these programs to develop, deliver mission at speed.
Yep.
Thanks.
Yep. All right. It's 12:30. Who doesn't want to talk about policy at 12:30? Right? Um, Policy equals friction or fuel at the end of the day, and you really have to understand what's going on inside of this complicated world more than ever. So FedRAMP 2.0 or 20X or whatever you call it is pure accelerant. Once any agency approves your service, the rest are now instructed to trust that ATO. Automated security packages hit production later this, some have already rolled out and some of the rest are continuing to hit. So we encourage investing now in messaging around continuous monitoring. And again, that sustainment aspect. CMMC 2.0 is the stick or the friction point. It's undergoing review, but every defense adjacent supplier engaging in levels 1 and 2 will need to self-assess on gaps before award of new contracts. And the time to do that is right now in order to avoid the post-October scramble that we all know is happening or beginning to come, or frankly will come once the drama of the FY26 budget is behind us. So all of the CMMC, SBOM, and other policies really signal a heightened oversight to drive cyber and supply chain rigor. Pay attention to that. Expect solicitations to reference NIST protocols, CMMC 2.0, and SBOM deliverables far more explicitly, and make sure that your messaging and your value propositions align to it. In terms of what that March executive order was that came out 14240, frankly, we're still not really sure if it's stick or carrot. What we do know is that it shook procurement and it's going to continue to drive GWAC consolidation and a mandatory path through MAS or MAS. Essentially, when he signed it, he effectively turned GSA into the single supermarket for the non-mission unique IT. Think about that. That evolution is going to continue. And so I would pay strong attention to that. And then I'd also look at the zero trust memo milestones. Like I said earlier, they're technically met, but Congress is watching sustainment metrics. So agencies have to spend to maintain compliance, or they're going to get dragged into Congress, which nobody wants.
Juliana, one thing to mention is that in Inquitel, we've published white papers on FedRAMP, CMMC, and SBOMs. So if anyone would like those white papers, just drop me an email at blafew@iqt.org, and we'll send those white papers over to you. Thanks.
I would highly recommend that you do that, understanding whether you've got a gas pedal you can press on or an obstacle you need to steer around. All of that's going to matter to your messaging, because realistically, although we're in a moment of pause right now, the moment a CR or the FY26 bill hits, then it's a mad scramble for 8,000 vendors, and you want to know exactly where you stand. All right, FAR, everybody's favorite subject. At the end of the day, I encourage you also to hit up the resources that you can about FAR. On April 15th, President Trump issued Executive Order 14275, kicking off a comprehensive overhaul of the FAR. This matters substantially, and I cannot say this clearly enough. EO 14275 establishes direction to create the most agile, effective, and efficient procurement system possible, and most importantly, contain only provisions required by statute or essential to sound procurement. The rewrite also aims to align with the Trump administration's broader deregulation agenda, emphasizing simplicity and business-friendly policies. The acquisition.gov site is referring to FAR 2.0 as the revolutionary FAR overhaul, and they are not far behind from, and I really don't think it's overstating the point. The FAR essentially contains layers of both statutory and non-statutory requirements. FAR 2.0 seeks to pare down the regulations, potentially reducing compliance burdens and overhead costs for contractors. As of today, phase 1, which was from early March all the way up through till June, or October rather, moved incredibly fast. Updates have been made to most parts of the FAR, all of which have had some systemic changes, as you can see on the slides. The biggest one to note that I've seen, the changes to SBA, COTS on GWAC, and buying guides. I'd highly recommend that you really do a little bit of research. I'd love, Barry, for us to have one of our upcoming videos really kind of talk about this, because I think there's some opportunities here. But it shifts the buying landscape for what the KOs were capable of doing before. The deviation text covers most major parts, and phase 2 rulemaking formally started in October to kind of carry this forward. But the direction is intact. Fewer non-statutory musts are now inside of the FAR, more speed and plain language, and agency buying guides outside the rule are meant to keep things going. So I keep a strong eye on this. Anything, Barry, is there anything you want to add before we shift into OTAs?
I think, Juliana, right, this is really, we talked about the government's focus on speed to mission, right? And this is one of the underlying ways that they're helping to facilitate that by really working to streamline the acquisition process, right? To make it easier and faster for the government to acquire products and solutions that they need to deliver mission.
I agree completely, but it is impacting things like set-asides. So if you're relying on set-asides, or if you're relying on some of that the FAR carve-outs to really kind of bolster your sales or your positioning efforts, you're going to want to take a closer look, because some of those no longer exist. And in terms of take-up, agencies have like 30 days to enact a change once it comes in. So it's been a rapid adoption. It's a rapid cycling of changes and adoptions by the agency. What I kind of tie the whole thing up with a bow is any deals that you have in contracting right now, you need to validate whether or not your contracting officer understands exactly what parts of the new FAR rollout apply to them and what they're going to really kind of leverage in their acquisition process, so that you don't get all the way to the end of the deal and then have it blown up or otherwise shifted because you didn't see the change coming. Make sense?
Sure does. Thanks.
All right. Let's talk about OTAs. OTAs are fun. So first, the policy is on your side. In April, EO 14265 directed the DoD to put commercial first and to use OTAs where suitable. A month earlier, SecDev told every component to use the software acquisition pathway, lean on CSO and OT agreements, and move faster. That's explicit top cover for small, non-traditional vendors like the IQT family, right? So you should be really looking at OTAs. Second, OTA usage is getting bigger. The GAO shows that the DoD's OTA obligations rose from $1.8 billion in FY16 to $18 billion in FY24, with prototype OTAs over the $16 billion mark last year alone. So GAO also notes that many programs prototype with an OTA. So if you're thinking about prototyping, think about OTA. They then shift to a FAR contract for production or general rollout, which is why your production plan needs to be baked into your prototype plan from day one. Third, you should act now. 3 fast lanes. The first one, CDAO's trade wins. Keep a current awardable pitch, and then watch every single open SAM call for immediate OT awards. Number 2, DIU. CSO challenges that convert into OT projects are going to be where you find opportunity and traction, particularly S2 smarts, which is great for microelectronics and comms and secure hardware stacks. Really, I want, and that's actually part of the third. I want you to think of RAMP-C as sort of a flagship example here. So I'm gonna talk to you a lot about how I would package things if I were in your shoes. So this is one example. I would actually take a look at a short-term prototype, so maybe a 90 to 180-day prototype, small dollar value with explicit statute 4022 follow-on language. Make sure it has clear data and IP rights and a named production path, either a production OT or the IDIQ your sponsor is going to use after the prototype. If you're selling software, cite the software acquisition pathway and be explicit about deployment cadence and ATOs. Finally, let's talk a little bit about funding posture. In a shutdown or a clean CR, OTAs can actually move money if the agency has prior year or no year RDT&E. Prior year or no year RDT&E. They're not exempt from the Anti-Deficiency Act, so tie your ask to available funds and be ready to scale the instant full year FY26 budgets come available. Bottom line, they're an incredibly fast and legal path from demo to deployment, especially for where we are right now. Pick the right lane, whether it's trade wins, DIU, or S2 marts. Make the production path obvious, and you're actually going to wind up converting pilots into revenue while everyone is waiting for the FAR rewrite to finish. Barry, anything you want to ask or add?
I think that's a great summary, Juliana. The OTA really represents a very fundamental change in how, especially the DoD, right, is acquiring and deploying. Again, back to the whole theme of speed to mission. This is just another tool that they're using to deliver capabilities faster.
All right. Okay, so SBIR and STTR, the authority is actually lapsed, and I know we all feel this, but the lapse means no new phase 1 or 2 topics until Congress reauthorizes. There's a little bit of drama around this. There's a whole conversation that you can track about whether or not this is actually going to reemerge. I think it has to. There might be, a rewrite down the road, but right now they've got to keep things moving. What still moves right now, previously obligated awards continue subject to agency policy, and phase 3 can proceed on non-SBIR funds. That's your bridge if you've got a path to production. The message to your team is realistically at this standpoint, what I would look at, SBIR is a tactic and not a strategy. We still have speed vehicles and buyers with missions. So I would really, again, look at the OTAs and look at the BAAs and really get into those motions if you can, and treat reauthorization as an accelerator and not a dependency if you can. Barry, anything to add?
I think that's a great summary, Juliana. The SBIR program, though, has proven to be a very effective way for IQT portfolio firms, right, to be able to go from phase 1 through to phase 3 and really see significant revenue. I've seen firms go from 300K phase 1 to 2 years later being in a phase 3 with revenue run rates in excess of 15 million a year. So and what the DoD can do is under a phase 3 they can designate it an OTA, which means then other DoD components can leverage that as a contract vehicle. So it's definitely something to pay attention to.
Absolutely. And particularly when you start to coordinate it with other buying vehicles, as you just identified. All right, so let's talk about how funding will roll out, because you've heard me talk about the fact that funding is available today. So new FY26 discretionary dollars don't exist yet. Most new IT starts or expansions really need that FY26 CR money, and they're on hold until we get a CR or an appropriations pass. However, obligated work continues where the funds are already obligated. So base periods, funded line items, and task orders. Agencies follow shutdown plans, however. Only accepted activities operate otherwise. That said, you're still going to see opportunity where you have no year, prior year, or multi-year funds. So really you have to take a look at where the money comes in. We say follow the money, but you've actually got to start from where the money originates. Agencies can obligate and spend these balances. However, annual FY26 are unavailable until the appropriation passes. So what I would look at realistically, I've listed up here areas where there is funding and spend actively today. What I would look at if I were in your shoes, and the 3 questions I would ask: can it use carryover or multi-year funding? Does it have its own appropriations, like the One Big Beautiful Bill Act? What rules govern it? So really, it's not just there's no money available. There is. You just have to know where to look. But added to that, once the clean CR passes, if a clean CR passes, agencies resume operations at FY25 rates with no new starts, unless they're specifically listed as anomalies, and that's the word you want to look for. At this point in time, I've listed a couple of here that will come in if this CR is passed, the one that's currently in play. And so I would look at, is the program an existing obligation? What is the existing scope, and what is the rate that the CR funds it at? So you have to be aware of that as well. So as you see, once we're spending money now, once a CR is funded, it unlocks more but caps it at the FY25 rate. Once we go ahead and get the full budget, then everything's turned on, right? So then you're able to have net new starts. Then you're able to have net new programs. Then you're able to actually start to spend money at FY26 approved rates. So I want you to start to think of these 3 slices and the fact that you have opportunities, each one of you, in each of these three areas, it's about building the game plan that allows you to go after opportunities in those areas, whatever area that we're at. Because my perspective is, even if they do sign the CR, my guess is they're going to sign a CR and attach an extension onto it. We might not be doing anything until January. So you really do want to understand sort of this slide here and what it means for your business, and specifically understand what programs within your customer base are currently moving money now and will move money under the current CR. Does that make sense?
Sure does. Thank you.
Okay. So now we've got the IQT focus areas breakdown. I'm going to move through this very quickly. This is where we get to even more information dense slides, and it's really meant to act as your playbook. A quick read at a high level. We're going to take a look at the 5 IQ or IQT trend lines, and I'm going to deliver sort of the so what here. Under AI, the agencies are greenlighting pilots, but only if the AI is trustworthy. CAIOs want evaluation, red team, and incident reporting built in. So from my perspective, the play, ship a governable use case focused on ISR, logistics, or acquisition analytics, a 90-day plan, and deliver clear ROI. From cyber, Zero Trust is now an operational program, and it's not a slide, right? There's lots of grant and agency dollars out in play for it. But buyers want microsegmentation, east-west visibility, and a fast proof of value. Like my perspective, the play, plug into existing dashboards and architectures, show how you do that, and commit to the cuts in MTTD and MTTR. For advanced systems, the DoD is pulling hard on hypersonics, directed energy, and next-gen sensing, as well as quantum secure comms and nav and autonomous platforms. You want to tie that and what's capable there to air and missile defense. Think Golden Dome, right? And then from a play perspective, what I like is really talk about how you support as a subsystem with open interfaces, test data, and a clear follow-on path that ties to the S2 MARTs and Statute 4022. In terms of space, this is where it's all about resilient LEO and MEO. Commercial partnerships for launch debris essay, as well as AMTI and space-based radar. Also, AI in the loop matters here for orbital analytics and threat detection. So the play, I want you to think about seconds to tip improvements and interoperability with tools like CSDA, EOCL, PWSA, and all of those aspects. Biotech, biosecurity and biodefense are really hot right now. We're going to talk about BARDA, DARPA, and DTRA funding, as well as synthetic biology, AI biosurveillance, and genomics. From my perspective, you can't really beat a lot of what's happening with BARDA, and particularly the EZBAA, right? You want to show the regulatory path plus data integrity and a credible scale plan. That's really important here. There's so much to like about this budget, guys. I really, I'm going to continue to wish that we had more time to dive into it, but focus is critical. No matter where you are on this spectrum and no matter what your play is here, I want you to think about one mission metric that you want to move, one fast vehicle to start, whether it's an OTA, a BAA, or an IDIQ, and one production path to scale. And I want you to think about these separately because that's how small IQT-backed teams are really going to win in the next 6 to 12 months.
Juliana, I think one interesting thing is, right, the headline that people read are about cutbacks in government and scaling back people and resources. But if you look at the areas where IQT invests, right, these are all growth areas, and they're phenomenal growth areas across AI, cyber, advanced systems, space, and biotech. So really represents a growing market opportunity in these areas versus a declining market, right? Overall, the spending, might be cut in certain areas, but in these emerging tech and solution areas, there's a tremendous opportunity.
I couldn't agree more, Barry. And if you take a look specifically at where the cuts are a lot of legacy sustainment motions, right? At this point in time, when you're looking at forward-leaning tech that actually moves the mission in a continuous and automated fashion, with guardrails, with security, with the ability to measure and monitor, then I think you see a lot to like. So I would agree. And again, don't just listen to the headlines about budget shrinking. We've talked about this It's actually the pie's growing bigger. It's just shifting, and you have to be aware of where the shift is. All right, so I've got 10 slides here, and I'm going to move through them quickly. I'm going to try and you'll see very quickly how it's all laid out. But again, there's going to be a lot here for you to dive into. On the civilian side, we're operating in a shutdown, and even in a clean CR. Agencies are going to be stuck at FY25 rates with no new starts, but they still have carryover no-year working capital and TMF, Technology Modernization Fund dollars. That's enough to keep small, well-scoped AI pilots moving forward. Think about that. The center of gravity right now, though, is the OMB M2410. Every agency must stand up AI governance, model evaluation, red teaming, and incident reporting. And that's not optional. So if your solution makes AI measurable, safer, more governable, you're immediately more relevant. So from my perspective, where I would focus is really going to be around the NIST AISI, CAISI for measurement and evaluation pilots, because these are credibility multipliers that make CIOs comfortable buying you later. I want you to really think about that. TMF backend projects, identity, CX, fraud and waste, because they can actually extend phases under a CR. And that's that's where you can get funding now. Health and benefits analytics at HHS, NIH, CDC, like genomic surveillance, eligibility, integrity, and triage automation are also hot areas. And I'd look at AI ops in the CFO Act agencies. I'd emphasize accelerating SOC and network operations where the dashboards are already funded. So you really kind of want to look, part of where you are right now, if you haven't figured it out, is you want to grab the FY25 funding bill, throw it into something like Notebook LM, and query it to make sure that you understand what's using multi-year funding, because that's your hunting ground right now, right? The one big beautiful bill matters because commerce-wide AI modernization dollars, once a portion, can actually fund evaluation pipelines. They can ingest QC automation and identity analytics at places like NIST, NOAA, Census, and BIS, even during a lapse. That's a near-term on-ramp for you. So generally speaking, I want you to think about like a 90 to 180-day pilot with three things. The first one, a sandbox and evaluation plan mapped to M2410. Two, a clear ATO FedRAMP path, even if it's by inheritance. And three, hard ROI around error reduction, cycle time cut, and improper payment deltas. Things like that, the metrics that actually matter. Outside of all of that, you're going to find fast funding in vehicles like the GSA MASS, HACS, SOUP task orders, challenge buys, and agency-level pilot instruments. But make sure you're explicit about data rights, privacy, and incident reporting, because this is governance theater, and you win by making it operational. I really want you to think about that right now. In terms of the DoD, DoD Defense/IC, AI is still moving because the work sits on obligated RDT&E and enterprise vehicles. So we've still got money moving. Again, RDT&E and enterprise vehicles. Under a shutdown or a CR, you can still get traction through DIU, CDAO trade wins, Service Lab BAAs, and ongoing ISR exploitation. Now, when the full FY26 lands, the aperture widens, but you really don't need to wait because they've got money moving right now. So 3 program lanes are actually going to matter the most for you. The first one, autonomy for replicator, so ADA2 and the collaborative UAS, USV, UGV environment, swarming C2, targeting, and autonomy stacks. For AI test and evaluation, that's area 2 I want you to look at. I want you to look at model assurance, safety cases, red teaming, and test range integration. Number 3, I want you to look at ISR exploitation and PED for PWSA and JADC 2. In particularly areas around multi-fusion, tasking optimization, and change detection. Think SDA NRO, ground, and low latency workflows. Here, believe it or not, the one big beautiful bill is also your accelerant because it includes appropriated AI lines around naval autonomy, TRMC AI T&E, counter UAS AI, US cybercom AI, and audit automation. These can actually move once apportioned even in a lapse. So that's a real door for evaluation buys that transition fast. I really, really like for FastPass looking at the DIU CSOs and CDAO trade wins for quick OT awards with statute 4022 follow-on production baked in. My favorites, AFRL, ONR, ARL, the research labs have BAAs for autonomy and T&E tooling. Really look there. And then NJ and NRO exploitation pilots that are aligned to EOCL workflows. Across the board, I want you to think about aligning to metrics specifically, right? Your metrics are going to be second to task, latency to insight, and mission available, as well as cost per effect. So if I were in your shoes, how I play now, again, short-term pilot that closes a mission vignette. Think about the mission vignette, a single one, right? Map it directly to an ADA2 kill chain, right? Task, navigate, coordinate, effect, or to JADIC2 PWSA schemas on the ground side. Bring an IL5 and an IL6 posture, a clear enclave strategy and a production path, i.e. which IDIQ-TO or follow-on OT is going to pick this up. Remember, you have to be thinking long-term. If you're selling pilots right now, you have to give the KO a long-term production path that includes one of their more favored vehicles. Okay, so on the civilian cyber side, the game is really essentially about execution at the FY25 levels with no new starts. But realistically, CDM Defend and Agency Zero Trust are actually keeping things moving forward on obligated funds. So that's going to be our opening. Where I want you focused is data that feeds decisions. I want you to think about asset, vulnerability, and identity telemetry that rolls up to agency federal dashboards because those pipelines are budgeted and visible. If your product improves signal quality, coverage, or time to containment, you're aligned with how the CISOs are being measured today. So really look at that. And again, the one big beautiful bill helps here. Commerce AI modernization dollars, once a portion, can actually fund identity analytics, anomaly detection, SOC automation, and evaluation pipelines at NIST, NOAA, CENSA, BIS, even during a lapse. Treat them as quick paths for pilot buys. So in terms of where I like to look at for practical lanes, CDM Defend, Agency Zero Trust, Incident Readiness, and Software Supply Chain. In terms of your move in this space, again, I'm totally focused on pilots, guys. Look at that short-term pilot with a crisp integration plan into CDM feeds or existing Zero Trust architecture. You also want to identify and promote FedRAMP ATO by inheritance, whether you're using it, net new or traditional. And then KPI deltas, a reduced risk. You really want to focus in on those KPI deltas of either a reduced risk score, lowered MTTD or MTTR, and then increase control coverage. So those are the things you kind of want to hyper focus on. But be explicit here about telemetry normalization, policy as code, and operator UX, because CISOs care about adoption friction. It's really important right now in this space. And line up the production pathway now. Which defend task order, which mass cleanse, or whatever your actual production vehicle will be so that the sponsor doesn't have to invent one when the full year lands. Remember, pilot now with the smaller budgets, but you really want to give them that avenue to production. All right, for DoD. Defense IC Cyber keeps moving, well, because it's defense, right? You've got Thunderdome and Service Cyber task orders that are already funded, and US Cybercom operations don't stop during this time. Our job is to snap into that momentum with outcomes that the DoD leadership can understand. So 4 areas here. Zero Trust rollout via DISA Thunderdome, SOC automation at US Cybercom, JFHQ, and DoDN. 3rd, SDA transport ground cyber. 4th, ICS OT defense for depots and ports, right? So some really rich areas here. And once again, interestingly enough, the one big beautiful bill is a real accelerant here. So US Cybercom AI and audit automation lines, once a portion, can actually fund analytics overlays that cut MTTD and MTTR and harden controls even during a lapse. So what do I like to see from a playbook? Another short time frame pilot, but I want you to think about one that plugs into DISA's reference architecture, demonstrates operator time saved and control coverage uplift, and then ships with SBOM and a patch posture. Aim your follow-on at a service IDIQ or 4022 follow-on OT, and When you're making the pitch, say it out loud, meaning really promote it. So metrics that are going to close deals for you include mean time to triage, policy drift reduction, percent of assets under zero trust policy, and analyst to incident ratio. Yes, it's a statement. Yes, this is all about really driving a level of persistence, continuity, and sustainment. If I take a look at the bottom line here, you're going to integrate where the big programs already are. So Thunderdome, US Cybercom, SDA, promise fewer clicks, faster containment, and show the production path on slide 1. Okay. So let's talk about the advanced systems from a FedCiv perspective. Civilian advanced systems are powered really by the CHIPS and STC and network modernization pilots across DOC, DOE, and NTIA. During a shutdown, RCR obligated NSTC awards and EIS edge pilots keep going. So that's where you're going to land the near-term wins. The center of gravity is really going to be around shared infrastructure and shared measurement. Agencies want platforms that many teams can reuse. So think metrology, packaging tests, design enablement, and AI on-chip validation, right? So this is really a shared investment. If you build tools that accelerate time to tape out or qualification, then you're going to be in demand. So I'm going to give you 4 lanes to target. Number 1, NSTC project calls through NatCast for metrology, packaging, and test. Bring a platform that others can stand on. 2, NIST pilots for AI on chip measurement and supply chain traceability. Show a real measurement plan. Go all the way back to the beginning where we started talking about measurements and continuity. It flows all the way through here. NTIA plus State Tech Hub 5G, 6G test beds. Specifically, I want you to think spectrum efficiency, reliability, and security. And then the last one, DOE industrial edge compute pilots, particularly around grid and manufacturing. So the one big beautiful bill here sort of plays, and it really kind of matters indirectly. So you're going to look at commerce AI modernization that can fund network telemetry and automation, as well as evaluation pipelines inside DOC once apportioned. Those are actually quick starts for ingest, QC, and analytics. So if you're in the advanced systems area, how do you play now? Pitch a platform, not a one-off. Really think about how to embed yourself as a horizontal platform. Think about chiplet reference flows, qualification rigs, test harnesses, and the like. I want you to also consider publishing a NIST-aligned measurement plan. I want you to offer data accessibility where it's feasible, and then add attestation and provenance for supply chain trust. All of that balances out a really well-rounded offering here. If you can stack partnerships, NatCast plus state tech hubs plus a national lab, then that forms the rest of the credibility triangle that's going to move projects for you. All right, so on the DoD side, microelectronics is really the pacing item. Under a CR, microelectronics and RAMP-C keep moving on obligated funds, and the full year FY26 is just going to add fuel to that. So 4 places to look at. Number 1, RAMP-C Phase 3, Intel A via S2 MARTs, and particularly prototype tapeouts, IP PDK enablement, and yield learning. Number 2, Commerce Hub projects. I want you to look at AI hardware, Secure Edge IoT, 5G, 6G quantum. And with that, I want you to think about bringing manufacturable IT and test packaging breakthroughs to the table. JADIC2 comms, open interfaces, SOSA, MOSA, LPI, LPD, waveforms, and resilient networking are another area where you're going to find some traction. And then 4, RAD tolerant compute and advanced packaging, specifically ship and stamp transitions. So here, the one big beautiful bill is actually going to lift demand by accelerating and automating AI, which is going to pull through secure comm silicon, crypto models, and telemetry. Now, once apportioned, certain AI ecosystem lines can actually fund assurance and software work even during a lapse. So consider that as well. So your winning package, the way that I look at it, start with a prototype, right? Prototype pilot, lead to a qualified device plan. And that qualified device plan should have fab packaging milestones, trusted flows and export controls, performance and yield targets, and a follow-on production service path, either an IDIQ or a 4022 OT. right? So we've talked a little bit about this. For networking proposals, think about quantifying latency and availability improvements and ship telemetry hooks, NetOps and cyber that ship telemetry hooks that NetOps and cyber can actually consume. This is an area where we're finding friction and a pain point that you can capitalize on. At the end of the day, you have to show how your tech is going to de-risk production, reduce time to field, and walk in ideally with a Foundry OSAP partner and a credible supply chain plan. If you can do that, that's going to be your validation right there. Okay.
Juliana, I think one thing to highlight on the advanced systems with the DoD is really just a maniacal focus on autonomy, right? That's autonomy of drones, aircraft systems, space, as well as even on the water. And so really we're seeing a huge focus on autonomy in this area as well. Thanks.
Absolutely. All right, so speaking of space, let's talk about the civ side. So civilian space buyers are actually steady because they rely realistically on IDIQs and DOs. So that's going to be your fast path. 3 areas to focus: the NASA CSDA, the NOAA Commercial Data Program, and the National Mesonet Modernization Activity. So if you deliver EO data, analytics, fusion, or nowcasting, sell your outcomes. Forecast skill improvement, detection sensitivity, latency to decision. If you can, be API first, document accuracy and uncertainty, and make sure that your licenses are actually science friendly, meaning you're going to look at a large user count. All right. So one big beautiful bill helps behind the scenes. So you've got Commerce AI modernization that can fund ingest automation, QC, and evaluation pipelines at NOAA and NIST once apportioned. But even during a lapse, if it's multi-year, there's availability of funding there. But you want to align your product to kind of slide into those pipelines. So if I were in your shoes, I'd target CSCA on-ramps, track the NOAA CDP amendments, and package a pilot that proves assimilation lift or response feed for FEMA, NOAA, and NASA users. Then you want to wrap all of it with SLAs around cadence and uptime and make sure to match their ingest tools in order to eliminate friction. For DoD, so the DoDIC space procurement is moving incredibly quickly through SDA and NRO, and obligated awards keep rolling even underneath an CR. So we're looking at 2 specific anchors that are really defining how to win. The first is the SDA Tranche 2. So essentially tracking and transport layers that value onboard autonomy, cross-link routing, and ground ML ops to compress tipping queue. So that's area number 1 to focus. Number 2, the NRO EOCL. Essentially, it's decade scale imagery buys that reward exploitation, tasking and optimization, and change detection. So if you can bring flight qualified ML, constrained compute autonomy, or a cloud ground pipeline that reduces analyst cycle time, then you are exactly what these programs want. So focus on that. Believe it or not, the One Big Beautiful Bill actually adds acceleration here because AI autonomy lines can fund ground mission software and exploitation once apportioned, and even if they're ongoing during a lapse. So consider that. Your fastest path here is going to be the OTA pilots that slot into existing ground segments or hosted payload experiments. Look at both of them, right? But either way, you're going to want a clear production path for follow-on OT or a program task order. So really start to line that up. The metrics to focus on: seconds to task, seconds to tip, analyst throughput, and mission availability under degraded comms. All right. So biotech. Civilian biotech, from my point, is really the friendliest terrain for IQT startups, especially during fiscal uncertainty, because the lanes are always on, full stop. So you're going to start with the BARDA Drive Easy BAA. It's staged funding, has fast starts, and a real pull to scale if you hit your milestones. But ideally, you want to pair that with ARPA-H, right? So big mission-centric programs where AI intersects screening, manufacturing, and at-home diagnostics. But if you add the DOE BETO for safe and biomanufacturing pilots and LPO for scale, then you start to really kind of look at a lot of valuable opportunities and an extended sale lifetime. Where to focus specifically? So buyers at this point want genomic surveillance, AI-assisted epidemiology, lab automation and QA, and manufacturing quality. So if your platform tightens time to detect or time to produce, you win. You're hearing a lot of time to, right? This goes back to what Barry was saying about mission velocity. Across the board, speed matters, particularly when you can measure that over a period of time. Now, the One Big Beautiful Bill helps here because Commerce AI modernization can actually underwrite data QA and evaluation pipelines at FDA, NIH, and NIST using interagency efforts once apportioned. Great for informatics and tooling plays. Really think about that. So here's how I play now, right? Not a pilot, but a small first-year plan with a clear regulatory path through FDA, USDA, and EPA. You want GXP manufacturability to shine, if you can, and wrap it all with a techno-economic use case that shows cost curves. Again, this administration wants that transparency. At the end of the day, you want to add to that data integrity via audit trails, SBOM, and patching, and privacy and security upfront. And think about your scale plan. We've talked a lot about this. Make it concrete. Add and name your CMOs, utilities, and feedstock logistics. So if you can, bottom line is if you can stage your risk, show regulators and payers a credible path, and use tools like BARDA, ARPA, HDOE, LPO in sequence to go from pilot to production, you're going to offer your buyer a very clean, easy path that they can sign off on. Now, Defense Bio runs through DARPA, BTO, and the ChemBio enterprise. So you've got CBDP and DITRA, and under a CR, obligated BAAs, OTs keep going, which is enough for you to think about land and expand. 4 lanes where your teams can shine. The BCI and neuro rehab, so human factors and cybersecurity, they actually matter as much as the signal. Number 2, autonomy for forward care. So think about hemorrhage control, triage decision support, and rugged diagnostics. Look at biosurveillance analytics, so low swap sensing, onboard preprocessing, and secure comms in theater networks. And then 4th, manufacturing for MCMs. Consider scale, quality, and resilient supply chains. Now, the One Big Beautiful Bill adds fuel via AI ecosystem and audit automation lines that support things like QA, logistics, and data integrity once apportioned, even during a lapse. So what would I do? Propose a prototype OT with a 4022 follow-on, deliver 90-day milestones and an IRB regulatory planning where appropriate. Then I'd bring in ruggedization, a cyber posture, and a transition sponsor, something like a service medical R&D or a program office. Keep it small at first and then escalate with field validation. Your evidence packaging, whether a bench, animal, or human is applicable, should make the path to operational use obvious. Again, everything we're talking about is starting with a small pilot and showing the path to production with continuous measuring and monitorization throughout. Define the clinical and operational endpoints, show how you shorten time to treatment or raise detection sensitivity, and give your sponsor a production vehicle to scale without delay. So, with 2 minutes left, what are my recommendations? First, go where the dollars are already moving. 2, package pilots that convert. That's no surprise, we've talked about it the whole webinar. 3rd, win on measurement and security. 4th, use the One Big Beautiful Bill intelligently. Where the appropriated lines exist, treat them as near-term fuel. Where they set the rules, that's going to be your compliance story. Finally, keep momentum across vehicles. As I see it, our collective advantage as IQT-backed startups is speed and credibility. So if you attach to the right missions and the right vehicles, you don't just survive the funding limbo, but you actually thrive in it and beyond. So I don't think I left any time for questions, Barry.
Juliana, first, thank you very much. That was just a wealth of information for IQT portfolio firms and partner community. So wanted to thank you for all of the time and effort that you put into putting together this fantastic briefing. And what I want to mention is a couple things here. We are recording today's event. We'll be sending out to everyone that registered a link with the recording. And and we'll also be sending a copy of the slides that Juliana reviewed today. And then with additional questions, and also I'd encourage you, Juliana's team can really support a variety of areas, right, in terms of go-to-market strategy, further research, help with marketing events, et cetera. You can reach Juliana at this email here, juliana.sly@govbizresults.com. So I'd encourage you to reach out to Juliana. And as I put in the chat room, you can reach me at blafew@iqt.org if there's questions or additional information that you need. So with that, I wanted to thank everyone today for their time and attendance. We look forward to putting together our next webinar, which will be in the December timeframe. And thank you for your time today. So have a great afternoon. Thanks.
And I've got ahead and put my email address in the chat for those